Hello, everyone. My name is Will Edmond, and welcome to our session called Food of the Future: How Plant-Based Diets Have Risen Since COVID-19. I have the pleasure to welcome Chuck Muth from Beyond Meat here also on the panel. And this is going to be a great panel. We're going to be talking to him about, Beyond Meat, how plant-based diets have risen since COVID-19, and a lot of other things about, vegan, plant-based meats, and all the good things that everybody that's out there watching on the internet, wherever you're from. And let me go ahead and welcome Chuck. Chuck, welcome to this panel. I'm so excited to have you here. I've been a fan of your product for a long time. Once again, Chuck is the Chief Growth Officer for Beyond Meat. That's right?
That's correct, yes.
Awesome.
Don't worry about messing up my name in the beginning. Everybody makes it wrong. It's Muth.
Chuck
So
Muth, right?
it's not a problem.
Muth? That's right.
Muth. Ruth with an M. Yeah.
Muth. We're going to have to get it right. Chuck Muth.
Don't worry. Everybody gets it wrong. So you're fine.
Gotcha. Thank you so much, Chuck. I'm so glad to have you here.
Well, good to be here. Yeah.
Yeah, so Chuck, tell people, let's go ahead and tell people more about you and where you're from and how you got started with Beyond Meat.
Yeah, actually, it's a pretty interesting story. First of all, I'm from Paterson, New Jersey, so North Jersey, right outside New York City. I worked for most of my career at the Coca-Cola Company. Actually started as a truck driver for Coke, and worked through the system. I spent actually 5 years in Philadelphia. So I lived in Center City, Philly for 5 years at the Philly Coke Bottling Company, where I was the head of sales and marketing. I later ended up at Coke in Atlanta, and I worked for a group called Venturing Emerging Brands, which is their it's the arm of the Coke that actually looks at entrepreneurial brands, and in some cases we acquire those brands. So think about brands like Honest Tea or Zico Coconut, what are typically health and wellness brands. And I actually retired from Coke in 2016, and the chairman of Beyond Meat is actually Seth Goldman, who is also the founder of Honest Tea. And he lived in Maryland, and at the time I lived in Maryland. He called me one day and said, "Chuck, would you want to have lunch?" And I said, "Sure." And he goes, "Well, come to my house. I got something special for you." And it was a Beyond Burger. And I was pleasantly surprised when he shared with me that it was actually made from plants, all plants. And it was very interested. And he said, "Look, the founder of Beyond Meat is actually going to be in Washington, D.C. this week, and he'd love to meet you." And I said, "Sure." I wasn't working at the time. I was sort of semi-retired. And I traveled over to D.C. and met Ethan Brown at his hotel, and we walked around D.C. for about an hour, just talking about sports and about life and about philosophy, really not about the business at all. But at the end of that hour, he gave me a piece of paper, and it was a job offer. And he said, "Chuck," he goes, "I want you to come out to California, and we're going to change the way the world eats." And that's a true story. And a couple of weeks after that, I was in LA. So it was that's how I got introduced to the company.
That's an amazing story. So when you first bit into that first Beyond Meat, what went through your mind?
I was really surprised. I mean, Seth had told me it was a plant-based burger. He didn't surprise me in that way. But when I first ate it, I was incredibly surprised that because I had eaten lots of veggie burgers over the years, Boca burgers and so forth, but nothing like this. I mean, you knew when you ate a plant-based burger, it wasn't going to taste like a beef burger. But in this case, the sensory of it was the texture, the taste, the smell, was all very meat-like. So it's almost like you have to take a double take and say, "Oh, is this really a plant-based?" At the time, there was really nothing like this out there that I was aware of. So it was really a surprise, and so it was good. It was great.
That's awesome. And like whenever my first experience with a Beyond Burger was the similar experience. Going back to my story, if it's your first time watching or finding out about me, I'm Will Edmond, and I'm from a small town in East Texas called Douglasville, Texas. And I grew up eating, beef and pork and things like that. So as now being a vegan, going back to, eating meat and comparing the Beyond Burger to, a meat patty, it has that texture. And I know you get this a lot, and I get this a lot as a vegan, is people like the texture. We want to mimic something that has the same texture. And I think Beyond Burger had, y'all figured it out, because the texture is so important for a lot of people who are into transitioning, especially if people are coming from, an entire meat diet to, switching to becoming vegan or vegetarian.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the purpose of the company. We are a mission company at our core. We had never, I think from the very beginning, to change the world, you don't get vegan and vegetarians to eat less meat. If you want to change the world, you have to convince consumers who have a desire, at least, to eat less meat, or we call flexitarians or meat reducers, what have you. And to get those consumers to eat less meat, you have to provide products from a sensory experience meets their expectations. And that's unfortunately not going to be, a bean burger, things that they've eaten in the past. So we had to raise the bar in terms of what we were delivering to those consumers. So there is a lot of science behind it. We have a large R&D facility. We are a food first company, but we had to find things, and we're still on the journey to find, ingredients from the plant world. Our products are 100% plant-based, but to find those ingredients and then through a process of heating, cooling, and pressure, create something that has a sensory experience that a meat reducer or flexitarian can relate to. And so that's always been our objective from the very beginning. And with that in mind, you have the Beyond Burger and other products.
That's awesome. That's great. Thank you. And then, ask you another question. What exactly do you mean when you say plant-based? People get kind of confused. Can you explain more about what plant-based is?
Yeah, I think early on, some of the brands that have in a lot of ways created the platform we work off of today, that created the vegan vegetarian burgers that many people are familiar with. Using the word vegan was perfectly fine if you were attracting a vegan or a vegetarian consumer. We don't use that terminology, not because we're ashamed of it in any way, but because, again, keeping true to our mission, that language can be associated with things like bad taste or not a plant, a meat-like product. So we use plant-based. We think that's an honest description of what we are. We are plant. Like I said, we're using 100% plant inputs. So we're fine with calling it plant-based. We just avoid things like vegan and vegetarian, only not because they're bad words, but simply because the audience that we're trying to attract may find that maybe something that they're not willing to do. So that's why we use plant-based.
Most definitely. Great. Another question, have other countries embraced Beyond Meat?
Yeah, actually I had a meeting just this morning talking about Europe. We're now in 84 countries. It is a global, it's a global phenomenon. We are in places like Brazil, and we're now in China. We're in lots of Asia. We're in Europe. We had a review today. We're in South Africa. We're doing quite well in South Africa. So it's not just a North America or a U.S. Situation. It really is a global recognition that there are better ways to feed the world and more efficient ways to feed the world. And so, it is definitely taking hold. There's certainly a lot of recognition, really, frankly, throughout the world.
Gotcha. So you said that the Beyond Burgers, Beyond Meat is doing really well in South Africa. Have you seen other countries that you've seen like, wow, you're kind of shocked that it was doing so well?
South Africa was a little bit of a surprise, but in some of the Latin American countries, we're doing quite well with, in Chile, for instance, Mexico now. China, like some of the Asian countries, are a little bit more challenging in the sense that the food that we recognize in U.S. and in North America and in Europe are very different over the way they prepare. Their tofu has obviously been a mainstay ingredient in China for a long time, but to bring products that replicate beef or pork or chicken is somewhat new to that market. So you have to put it in things that the consumer there would recognize might be dumplings or other types of products. So it does require us to rethink in terms of how we want to deliver our products to those consumers in those markets.
Gotcha. And another question for you, going back to where I'm from, like in a rural town, like East Texas, how can Beyond Meat be like, lead the forefront, to get more of those products in those rural areas? Because where I'm from, it's kind of like it's a food desert, basically. We only have like one Walmart, and it takes us 20, 30 minutes to get to that store. And, a lot of illnesses and things like, come from, meats and things that people eat. So how can Beyond Meat and other plant-based brands lead the forefront and getting more of their products in the rural area where people I feel like need it the most?
Yeah, actually, our products are available in not all, but most supermarkets in the country today, including places like Walmart, which are servicing that community, but not in every Walmart. So therefore, there are going to be, as you said, deserts out there where you can't find it. So we do a direct-to-consumer program, so those consumers can certainly buy it online. So we've done those type of things to try and reach those consumers. But we do want to democratize the brand. I mean, we want the brand available to all consumers in the U.S. and frankly all consumers around the world. And we think that over time that will continue to grow and evolve. And then a lot of it is education. I mean, how do you educate consumers in some of these markets that there are other ways to get a very nourishing, protein-rich meal, center plate protein that doesn't include, animal-based or it doesn't require things that are going to impact the environment or are going to impact your health or going to impact the lives of animals. So a lot of that is education and a lot of it is historical and it takes time. One of the things we have done, I think that is helpful, is we've worked with a lot of ambassadors, both from a sports arena as well as from celebrities, actors and actresses. So those are in many cases, those are individuals that consumers anywhere will look up to and will respect. And when you hear that Michael B. Jordan or Snoop Dogg or Kevin Hart or Leonardo DiCaprio or Lindsey Vonn, and they're all eating plant-based meals or eating our products, it gives you encouragement that, hey, if it's good for them, this is something I might try as well.
Exactly, you're right. It's a cool factor. When Beyond Meat hit the market a couple of years ago, people were like, "Oh, I'm having a Beyond patty." There's a restaurant here in Atlanta called Yeah Burger, and that was the first time I ever had a Beyond Burger with a Yeah Burger. And when I bit into it, I was like, "What is this?" And then I had to find it in the store, and then I started making them myself. And I made some on my TikTok and my Instagram, and people love it. People want to see other people, using a product, because that's how we really change it. And one thing about, being a vegan and being plant-based, for me, I never push like, hey, you need to go vegan, you need to go plant-based, and it's people's face. I was like, show them the product. I show them a good, tasty, hearty burger that looks something similar to what they used to eat, and they're like, hey, I think I can do that.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think there's the stigma, I think, associated with eating. That's why I say we avoid words like being vegetarian, only because there's a little bit of a stigma there for many meat eaters. Look, we don't say negative things about animal meat. We think consumers have a choice and they should make that choice that's right for them. All we're trying to do is put a product out there that won't disappoint, that you'll be happy with consuming. And the fact that it's a better for you, better nutritionally, more protein, less fat, things like that, more iron, better for the environment, and then doesn't require better use of land resources and water resources, and then also not requiring animal. Those are choices an individual consumer will make. All we're trying to do is make that choice a little bit more interesting for them.
That's awesome. And then talking about choices, just going to like restaurants. I know Beyond Meat is in like Dunkin' Donuts. Where other restaurants use Beyond patties?
Well, I mean, you said Hardee's, but also Carl's Jr. In Canada we're in A&W. We're in Starbucks up in Canada, also in China. We've done some things with KFC and Pizza Hut. So we're looking at. I can't unfortunately talk about future customers, but there's a lot going on today. I would say the following, that there's not too many retailers or QSR restaurants that don't recognize that there's a changing consumer behavior in terms of what they're eating, thinking about what they're eating, and are at least looking at the space very aggressively. It wasn't that long ago that you wouldn't find products like ours anywhere outside of a vegan section in the supermarket. Today, you see it in the mainline meat section pretty much everywhere around the country. So that's a change, and it's a recent change as well.
That is a recent, and it's a great change as well. Thank you. So another question: are there any added health benefits to going plant-based?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of research. I think one of the things that's changing today is that there's a lot of research out there that consumers can access to. There's been a lot of documentaries around like Game Changers and What the Health and Fork Over Knives, books like Omnivore's Dilemma and things like that. There are plenty of information out there for consumers to go out and make their own judgment. We can say though that we have no cholesterol, that we have more iron, we have less fat, we have more protein. Which is I think the big surprise that we do have more protein. I think a lot of consumers out there feel like you need to eat animal meat to get your protein intake, but that's not really true. You can get those animals actually get their protein from plants that are transported through their bodies. So we're able to deliver it without the animal. I mean, in a sensory way that's attractive. I think that's something that would appeal to consumers.
Gotcha. And when you're talking about protein, I get asked that question a lot, and that's a misconception that people think that you can't get protein from eating vegetables. And I tell them, tell people that it's the same thing. If you look at the animals and things like that, how do they get their protein? From the grass and things, from all the green vegetables. So I'm glad that you said that as well. So for the people out there listening, you can get protein from plants as well. So thank you for that, Chuck. Another question for you. How is Beyond Meat differentiating itself from a traditional veggie burger, black bean burger, and the competitors like the Impossible Foods? What makes the Beyond Burger really stand out?
One thing we never do is say anything negative. We don't want to say negative things, of course, for anybody, even for animal meat, but especially in the plant-based world. But I will say, look, we invest a lot of money in research. We have now something around 150 food scientists in culinary, our team today, and we're adding to that on a regular basis. So we invest a lot in the food and the R&D part of this business, and it's not an easy thing to do what we're doing. And so we think the quality stands out, honestly, and the sensory of tasting much like an animal meat really stands us out from the competition. The other thing is we don't use things like GMOs. We don't use MSGs. We use all plant-based inputs. There's no unique, synthetic ingredients, things like that. We've tried to be, one of the things we have really prided ourselves on is taking a long journey and working with things that are coming from the plant world, because to do anything else, we think ultimately would disappoint. And so we want to be true to our mission, which is not just, to provide products that taste a lot like, but also to provide nutritionally better products or environmentally impactful products that consumers can eat. We think the long game is going to play out to products, not just our product, but products like ours.
Gotcha. And then also, I'm really into, when you're talking about there's a lot of scientists, on the team working to make the product better. Can we educate people more about what is pea protein? Because that's one of your main ingredients in the Beyond Burger. Can we talk more about what is pea protein?
Yeah, well, you're getting into the science ends of things. It's probably a little bit above my skill set, but we don't use just pea protein any longer. By the way, we use a variety of protein sources from plants. Things like mung bean, brown rice, sunflower seeds. I mean, it's not infinite, but there are a lot of opportunities to secure nutritional ingredients from plants. So we're not wedded to just pea, but pea has been a big one. We do use soy. We have used soy in the past in our chicken products. We're not anti-soy in any way. We think soy is perfectly fine. The problem with soy is, of course, it's an allergen for a lot of consumers. So that's the main reason we've tried to avoid it. I'm not saying we won't use it in the future. For instance, in Asia, soy is a very
it's huge.
It's huge, right? And so but it does have a little bit of a stigma. So we don't in North America and in Europe. So, but having said that, we're not anti-soy in any way. We think soy is perfectly fine. But we use pea because it does differentiate ourselves from most of the original veggie burgers, and many even today are still using soy. I mean, and that was something we didn't want to do. So we use pea, but again, other proteins. We're basically using the isolates. And so, again, staying true to using plant-based inputs.
That's awesome.
And it's a very good source of protein, by the way.
Gotcha. And let's see. Most recently, COVID-19 seems to have caused a surge in the consumption of plant-based proteins and meat alternatives. Is there a specific reason for this behavior? Why do you think that more people switch to want to become more plant-based during the pandemic?
Well, I mean, I personally believe that there's been a bit of I think it's sped up the awakening. I think a lot of consumers today are questioning some of the choices that we're making. Many of the viruses today are animal born. And not that COVID caused it directly, but I think one of the other things that we've seen is some of the press around what's happening at these animal manufacturing facilities. Just reading an article yesterday in USA Today, I think something like 39,000 or close to 40,000, COVID cases are directly related to these animal production facilities. And I think almost 200 deaths or something. So it's quite and it's difficult because the requirements in there, the working conditions are extremely difficult and challenging to separate people. And so there's a lot of I won't get into it, but there's a lot of controversy in how we as a government responded to that. And so I think that I think as people, especially young people, are reading about this and learning more about it and being exposed to the documentaries I mentioned earlier, I think there's just a better learning and knowledge today than it was years ago. And I think people are challenging things that they've done before and saying, does it really have to come from an animal? Are there other options? Even if it's not every day, is it an option I can come in once, twice, 3 times a week? Can I mix up my meals a little bit so it's not we know that red meat in particular has, potential health impacts. That's been well documented. Eating too much red meat, probably not a good thing, honestly. So if you can find other things to satisfy that craving, that may not be, a different choice. I think people are looking to do that. And the category is growing. I mean, it's growing very quickly.
That's awesome. Let's see. What does the future, this is a good question. What does the future of food look like to you? What does the future of food look like to you?
Yeah, there are a lot of studies out there. There's one that we quote quite a bit, that in 10 years, today, about 1% or less than 1% of the $1.4 trillion or $1.5 trillion in animal meat globally are purchased. That, today it's less than 1% is plant-based, but in 10 years, it'll be 10 times that, or about 10%. So that's quite a big leap in a fairly short period of time. But still, it would only be 10%, right? But I've seen other studies that look further out to 30 or 40 years that says that there's a world where, plant-based or cell-based will actually be larger than animal meat combined. And so will I live to see that world? I probably will not, but I do believe that as society continues to evolve, and I think the realities of the environmental impact that we're seeing right now will continue to be a factor. And as it becomes a bigger and bigger factor, we're going to have to make tougher and tougher choices. So it really, I will say though, that it's one of the more impactful things you can do for the environment is eat less red meat, because, in general, we know animal meat around the world consumes something like 30 or a little over 30% of the world's land mass, non-ice land mass, and about 25% of the fresh water around the world. I mean, that's not sustainable if that's going to grow. The population growth and the growing wealth around the world is going to encourage more meat consumption. So I've seen studies that says meat consumption will grow 70% in 30 years. Well, if you can't grow 37% in 30 years and use more land and more fresh water. So we're going to have to find, as a society, better ways to feed the world. And I believe that plant-based or cell-based will play a bigger role.
Cell-based, you're right. Another question for you. What advice do you have for innovators and entrepreneurs looking to succeed, especially with a company like Beyond Meat has grown, so fast? What advice would you tell people, who are if they're trying to start their own plant-based company or brand, or, trying to start a business? What advice would you give them? Give me 2 things that, you think will help for them to succeed?
Well, besides hiring me, I'm just kidding. Just kidding out there. If anybody's listening, no, and I really am kidding. I feel very fortunate to be here. I mean, this was the right time and the right place. There's amazing. When I came here, we had 2 salespeople in the company and only a few marketing people. But today we're quite big, much bigger, and it's really an amazing team here. Look, I have always said to all the entrepreneurs, I was very fortunate I'm not an entrepreneur. I don't claim to be. But I was very fortunate at Coke with their venturing group to work with a lot of the entrepreneurs like Seth Goldman. I'm on the board of an entrepreneurial company called Vibe Organics. Ethan Brown at Beyond Meat. All these founders are amazing people. I mean, and they all have, I don't want to say a secret formula, but basically they all have a vision, by the way. They all have a vision that they believe in that makes their whatever they're doing, visible to consumers. They're consumers, and they build a fan base through that. I mean, we have a lot of consumers. I think we have over 1 million Instagram followers, and we've got a lot of consumers that follow what we're doing, and there is a responsibility with that. But I think those entrepreneurs all have some kind of a vision in mind, something they're very committed to. But more than that, they've got to grind it out. They've got to be realistic. They've got to grind it out. They probably should hire, I'm not saying big, but you probably should hire some professional management, because just having a vision isn't going to be enough, and you're going to have some fundamentals in that. You should be true to that vision. I will tell you that the one thing that has always impressed me with entrepreneurs is they make the impossible possible. It's through their sheer will and focus and desire, and with a little help from some people that know how to get that done. So I think those 2 things are what I would say.
That's awesome. And I see that, we have a few questions that are coming in. So I'm going to ask you one more question, Chuck. Beyond Meat has a lot of products. So what's one of your favorite recipes? What do you like to do? Do you like just to grill up a good old burger, or do you like to make something else? What's one of your favorite recipes? I want to know, and I think the world wants to know as well.
Well, our breakfast sauce is really amazing. I mean, whether it's at Dunkin' or whether you can make it at home, you can buy it now in a supermarket. Yeah, it's pretty darn amazing. I mean, honestly, I had one this morning for breakfast. So, I love our breakfast sausage. That's really my
That's awesome. You know what, Chuck? I had 2 of them this morning for breakfast as well, but I had it on a croissant with some Miyoko's cheddar cheese. So, yeah, we were thinking alike this morning.
And by the way, those of you in the Philadelphia area, you can get it at Wawa as well. So I go to your favorite Wawa and pick it up. Wawa is my go-to when I'm back in the Philly area.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So yeah, we're going to get into the questions now. Chuck, thank you so much. So I'm just going to scroll over here to our little queue area, and we have some questions over here. Let's see. So it says, Chuck, what do people say to their family or friends that say fake meat is full of chemicals when we know it's not, but they don't understand? So you want me to read that again? Did you understand that?
No, I got it. Okay. Yeah, it's very disappointing for me, because there's been a lot of misinformation put out by what I call black ops. I mean, probably working for cattlemen or something, associations. I don't know that for sure, by the way. But they are obviously not friends of the movement, and they have frankly spread misinformation out there. We don't include chemicals in our products. That's not true. But yet, you're right. I read about it many times. I see it in social media. I cringe when I read it in social media, because it's not true. But hexane. Somebody mentioned hexane is used to extract soy. No, we don't use soy, so we don't have hexane. We don't use hexane. We're very serious about our ingredients. We invest a lot in identifying the right ingredients. We have a great quality team that does a lot of inspections. We do animal DNA testing. We do lots of testing. We do so much testing, it takes about a week, 10 days to get it released. And so I don't know what to say. I mean, again, there is a lot of misinformation out there. I think an educated consumer is somebody that we rely on. Don't believe, of course, everything you read, because there is people can say what they want sometimes, and it doesn't make it true. And it's unfortunate that there are people doing these type of things and spreading these type of false information, but they are.
You're totally right about that. All right. So let's see. Any questions here? Any thoughts about the role of seaweed in plant-based diets?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, I don't personally like seaweed, but I know people who do, and I mean, it's certainly, yeah. I mean, and I would say this: if this is about it being in any of our food products, I mean, honestly, there's not I want to say a stone, but I'll say a plant we're not turning over. I mean, we're looking at everything that is possible. Again, we have a lot of health checks. We want to make sure we're providing the healthiest options we can. Um, Understanding, though, that to meet the sensory expectations of a meat eater, we've got to include things like fat and oils, and I know we get a lot of complaints about that too. But we try and keep it to a minimal. I will tell you our three major objectives we have right now is one, to make our products taste even more meat-like. We do improve our products every year. So the Beyond Burger you get today, I to disappoint, but we'll probably not be the Beyond Burger you get a year from now, because we're going to continually try and evolve it and make it a little bit better, but also make it nutritionally better too, reducing saturated fat. I mean, even though we're less than animal meat, we want to reduce it even further. I mean, so there's a lot of work around how we do that. Taking out ingredients like methylcellulose, people complain it's a binder. I mean, it's in cakes and it's in ice cream and it's in lots of foods, but the name itself scares people. It comes from a tree bark or something, but we are trying to find alternatives. I mean, there are other things we can do. So we are constantly trying to evolve the products and make them better. And the final thing we're trying to work on is cost. I mean, the cost is still higher than animal meat. We are working tirelessly to improve our supply chain. We are not looking to make more margins on our product. We're looking to pass those savings on to consumers. So ultimately, we will be as cheap or cheaper than animal meat. That's our objective. We're not there yet, or even close at this point. But we're getting closer. I will say that, but we're not quite there yet.
Most definitely, because I know in the last year, I've seen the price of Beyond patties go down some in the local market that I get them, and so that's great. It's like almost $1. I feel like, because I can find them down in some stores for like $4.99. So
promoting more. Yeah, we're promoting more, and also you're going to see things like Cookout Classics, which you may have seen down in Atlanta and Kroger and or other Publix had it. Actually, Publix does have it. So those Cookout Classics were a 10-pack. So basically, we put a 10-pack together. We reduced the price. The retailers helped us too. A lot of the retailers worked on better margins for it, and we're able to close that gap with animal meat quite significantly.
That's awesome. Let's see. Another question here. Is there a cookbook available to incorporate your products in our kitchen?
Yeah, you can go to our website. There are recipes on our website that you can access include those recipes.
That's awesome. All right. And then also
our website, beyondmeat.com.
That's great. And I also have a recipe for a Beyond Burger in my cookbook as well. And it's delicious. Like a Tex-Mex burger with the Beyond patty. All right.
We want to get that one.
Yeah, it's so good. All right. Do you have Chuck, do you have a dream partnership as far as a brand or restaurant chain?
Well, I don't want to, I mean, obviously the biggest restaurant chain in the world is McDonald's. I mean, certainly that would be a dream partnership. I mean, and and look, I know there are a lot of people who may be vegetarian, vegan saying, oh my God, would ever go in KFC or would go McDonald's. Really is you don't change the world. Again, I go back to my original statement. Okay, our focus has been meat eaters, meat reducers, and that's where some of them go. And so we want to be there where consumers consume food. We want to make a difference. We believe it's imperative to move away from entirely from diets of animal meat to more plant-based diets. We think it's important for all the reasons I said earlier. And so to do that, we're going to have to reach them in the restaurants, in the grocery stores, and by the way, in the sections of the grocery stores where they shop, which is why we're in the meat, what was formerly known as the meat case, we now call the protein case.
Awesome. So here's a good question we have. It says, how important are all the senses when making a new product? I can imagine look, feel, texture can all be important aside from the taste. So how important is using all those senses when creating a new product?
Well, it's critically important. We have the way we work with our R&D center, we actually have people working on each of those sensory experiences. Texture obviously is critically important when you're eating, whether it's a burger or a sausage. It's really important to get that texture right. But even the color, even the taste, obviously the taste is paramount, but also, the aroma and things like that. So it is the whole package at the end of the day. I don't believe anybody in a plant-based world is there yet. I think we've all made progress in that direction, some more than others. We invest a lot, and we're very proud of what we've done. But I do believe there'll be a point in our future where if you're consuming a Beyond Meat product or an animal-based product, you will not know the difference. The only difference will be the nutritionals and the environmental impact.
Mm-hmm. You're totally right. And do you think that vegan and vegetarian will ever be the majority in the world? That's another question. Do you think? I know we talked about the numbers, how it's going to rise. Do you ever think it'll be a majority?
But I don't really know. I don't think anywhere near my lifetime it will happen. But I do have a vision that there'll be some point in the world, generations from now, where kids will come back and say, "Mom and Dad, remember when you ate animals?" And it'll be almost like, "Okay, wow, that was pretty interesting that you actually did that." I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'll be honest, I don't know. And again, I don't want to. People who want to eat animal meat should eat animal meat. I mean, I don't say anything negative about that. I mean, it's a reality. I don't think that'll happen. I'm not one that's going to say in 10 years or something that's going to happen. It won't happen. I don't believe it will happen, in fact. But I do believe there will be a gradual and continuous pull in that direction to eating less animal meat and eating more I'll call diversified diet for protein, which will include plants or, as I said, cell-based type products.
Mm-hmm. All right. Someone asked where they can get my cookbook. It's at willedmond.com. Someone asked that question in the chat. Another question for both of us, Chuck. It says, what are some of our top seasonings you feel enhances the flavor of Beyond Meat when we're cooking it? So.
Oh, wow. Hey, I have to be honest. I mean, this is going to sound very sexist, but my wife does most of our cooking, man. So I'll defer to you, Will. You're much more an expert on this than I am.
Okay, so some of my favorite seasonings to put on a Beyond Burger, it's like, have you heard of Slap Your Mama seasoning? It's out of Louisiana. It's called Slap Your Mama, and then Tony Saturates. I put a little bit of that on there to get a little spice, a little kick. And I love the Beyond Burger because it has that smoky grill taste in it as well. So I feel like that combo works well. So what about you, Chuck?
Well, I'm going to try Slap Your Mama. I mean, how could I not try that? Now I wrote it down even. I'm going to have to get that one.
It's a yellow canister.
I grew up. I put pepper on. I'm good to go, and some ketchup, and I'm good. I'm good to go.
You're good. It's the basics. I love it. I had another question up here. It was really great. It said, going vegan is a major change for most people. What would you say is the very first thing to do once you decide you want to go vegan? And I can piggyback on wherever you want.
I'm not a vegan. I mean, my son's a vegan now, and he went vegan a couple of years ago. I think the challenge is vegan is particularly challenging first of all, I have to say this, and you have to. It helps if you live in the right area. I mean, if you're living in places like New York or LA, or Atlanta, big cities, I think there are a lot of options. I mean, I've eaten in a lot of vegan restaurants that are amazing. I mean, they're really great. But to make all those things at home, getting rid of things like cheese and egg in particular, milk's pretty easy to get rid of now because you have so many plant-based milks out there. But cheese, there's lots of cheeses too. But do they melt? It's a problem. I think it's a little bit of a challenge. I mean, look, there are good plant-based cheeses as well. I'm not, of course, there's plant-based eggs too. But I think the challenge is finding the right recipes in the right place where you can buy, natural stores typically where you can buy the type of. But I have to say, more and more mainstream stores are offering plant-based alternatives across the entire spectrum. So it's certainly becoming easier to be a vegan than it was before.
And also, to piggyback off that, I tell people all the time when they ask me questions how to go vegan, it's all about a process. For me, I cut out beef and pork probably like 13, 14 years ago, but I've only been vegan for about 3.5 years, three and a half years now. So it was like a transition, from our early 20s and mid 30s to get here. And like you said, it's very important if you have live in Atlanta, there's three or four Whole Foods in Atlanta. There's Trader Joe's. There's so many places that we can get, these options. But if I go back home where my family is from, there's only, we only have one store. So it's not that many options. So it's a little bit harder. So location is a key thing to really transition and to try out new products. So that was great, Chuck.
And let me add one more thing to it too, that you probably know better than I do, Will. But It's tough when you're with family and friends too. I mean, that's why like we've had vegan Thanksgivings at our house for the last couple of years, and frankly, I love them. I mean, because after all, I've realized that I really didn't like turkey that much anyway, and the sides were really the highlight. So we've been able to do that pretty well, but it does take a cooperative effort with family and friends because even for my son, I mean, it can be challenging when he was living with, he's with Beyond Meat now, but he was living with us for a little bit because we have to make sure the foods that he wants, the foods that he feels comfortable with. So sometimes that was challenging for us when we were eating products that he wouldn't eat. So,
Gotcha. All right. So let's see. We have another question right here. It says, is Beyond Meat concerned about the overabundance of carbohydrates in a U.S. diet, including sugar, soft drinks, corn syrup, and everything? So what are do you have concerns about that?
Well, if you're asking me personally, yeah. And look, I work for Coca-Cola, and I know that, and I believe that sugar is something to be avoided whenever possible, in carbohydrates. And we know that lowering carbohydrates can help weight loss and things like that. I'm not a nutritionist. I don't know enough to say anything more than that. But I would say that Beyond Meat has a role as well, and we don't really get involved in that type of conversation. I mean, we have a role. And we're trying to fulfill our role, and that is to put center plate protein without using an animal and using healthier ingredients, plant-based ingredients. I mean, that's the role we're playing right now. But as a personal, I understand some of those questions. And look, I'm very concerned about what I eat and what I put in my body. And so I am trying to make choiceful decisions. I'm not always completely successful at it, but I try. I mean, I try, and I am getting better. I am. It's like you think more about it, you learn more, and you think more about it. You're concerned about things like obesity or being overweight. I mean, we could all lose 10 pounds, right? But you have to start making those choices in order to accomplish that.
Gotcha. Another question we have, and I think we're gonna probably have two more questions because we're getting close to our time. So where do you get inspiration for innovative ideas on meat alternatives? That's a good question. So where does the inspiration come from?
Well, we have lots of data, obviously, and we look at everything. If you can imagine anything that is animal based, you can imagine that we're probably looking at and being inspired to come up with better options. We do, as I said, we have a very large R&D center today, with a growing R&D center with quite a few food scientists, many PhDs. Many of those PhDs had previously worked in things like cancer research and other areas. So instead of working on cures for diseases, we like to think we're working on preventative measures. So, and that inspires. We do have a very inspiring R&D team in general. Frankly, many of the people that work at Beyond Meat, the associates that work at Beyond Meat, are encouraged and encouraged by the mission of the company, what we're trying to accomplish. We all believe, I think, at some level, that we're doing something to make a difference. And so that does inspire people every day to come to work creatively and try and find things. Everyone works super hard, obviously, but to find things to accomplish that mission.
Gotcha. All right. I think we have time for one more question. And this is actually a question that I have because it just crossed my mind. Do you ever see plant-based companies like Beyond Meat and other companies getting into like school districts for more healthy options for schools? Do you see that in the near future?
Well, we are on many college university campuses in the U.S. and globally. We are in some schools. The challenge has been honestly cost, because most of the schools have cost restrictions in terms. So one of the really big objectives for us is to reduce that cost. I mean, I know we get a lot of complaints about the cost, but trust me, we're not like making a lot of money. I mean, it's more that we need to improve our supply chain. We need to scale. Scale is a big part of this. Pea protein was not really used for what we're using it for not that long ago in any kind of big way. So there's not enough supply in some cases, so that causes prices to be higher. So I think as we can lower our pricing, I do believe I know a lot of schools are looking at more plant-based options for students. Out here in LA, I know there's a big movement in that direction. We applaud that. We think that's the right decision, whether we're using our products or others. But we'll compete in that space as we can get our products to be a little bit more affordable. And
that's awesome.
Getting kids to start at a younger age, understanding that in general, our products, our category attracts a younger consumer. Millennials and Gen Z in particular are much more open to eating plant-based diets than people my age, unfortunately.
Yeah, you're right. Because I tell my grandmother, I was like, "You want to try this?" She's like, "Babe, what's that?" So she has no clue. But if you give my little cousin, she knows Beyond Meat, Impossible Burgers, because it's what's in now. So it's great how it's changing. It's awesome. So Chuck, this was the last question. I want to say thank you so much for being on this chat tonight. It was a pleasure. I'm a fan of the company and the work that you're doing, and I hope everyone that's out there who tuned in, thank you for your questions. We hope you continue to get inspired by what we're both doing, and also continue to educate yourself about more plant-based diets and trying out more Beyond products as well. So once again, Chuck, thank you so much, and I hope to get to meet you in person.
Yeah, that'd be great.
The energy and the love and everything like that, and so I can maybe share a good recipe with you as well.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And I just want to say one last thing to the audience out there: go beyond. You can all do it.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.